Good afternoon, everybody. This is Purple Update Live. Vikings Bears post game show uh, ran a little bit later than normal because I wanted to see the outcome of the Packers and the Lions game. Excuse me. This is a professional start to a show. That's what happens when you chug Red Bull and hold back your tears. Yeah, I wanted to see the outcome of the Lions and the Packers game just to see, obviously, where the Vikings would end up playing next weekend. And then now that we have seen the outcome of those games, we know that the Vikings will be going to New Orleans, down to the Bayou, a repeat of the NFC semifinal playoff game from 2017, the scene of one of the greatest moments in team history. I'm getting old. The Minneapolis Miracle, or as this says, the Minnesota Miracle. That's his autograph, by the way. I'm fancy. I'm a Minneapolis Miracle guy. I don't know where you guys land on that. I think that, this doesn't really matter, but that's what Paul Allen said at the time. And this is going to sound like bullshit, but ironically, I also screamed, "It's a Minneapolis Miracle," when it happened from my sister's kitchen because I refused to watch the end of that game. So I was just pacing angrily in the kitchen, which seems to be kind of my MO, I guess. The article that I prefaced in the pregame show about the Super Bowl window and the coaching decisions that this team makes is going viral, I guess. It's one of the most viral articles we've had. It's on the Viking Horn or VikingsHorn.pro boards message board. And surprisingly, a lot of people agree with me. But one person said I seemed torqued in my writing, which either means I seemed not sober or angry or both. If that was me back in 2014, he would have hit the nail on the head for both of those. But he was only right about one of those things. And that is not really my anger. I guess it's gotten to the point of just sadness, disappointment, angry disappointment. It's something that I'm glad, I guess, that people are agreeing with me, but it's not something I want to be right about. I would love for the Vikings to upset the Saints next weekend, and for me to look like an idiot, and for them to win the Super Bowl. I would love it. I would love it. I would fill this with my own tears and drink it. So, the game wasn't, I don't really want to talk about the Vikings game that much. It was nice to see Boone bounce back from last week, kind of. Obviously he had a really rough start to his game. The fumble, the interception, that was his fault. But he averaged almost 9 yards a carry in that game. And the Vikings offensive line did well, opening holes for him. He's not the biggest guy in the world. It was nice to also see Aviante Collins get his. Diggs seemed very happy about that. It's a weapon maybe they could use next weekend. Who knows, if they decide to run the offense that you and I know that they should. But when it comes to what I watched in the Packers-Lions game, I just want to make a point that, and I don't want to use this show as a soapbox to defend my articles and say, look how smart I am, or guess who told you that. But I did write an article also this week. The Packers were contenders, and I think that, first of all, the play calling on the drive that preceded the one that ended with the field goal, the game-winning field goal, was insane. Just airing it out down the field multiple times when Rodgers clearly, again, and this is where I'm getting back to my article, or the articles I've written about this, he's not playing at the level that we grew accustomed to. And I think this game was evidence of that. I think, he's just off. He's just not making the throws that we're used to. And that's a good thing. I'm sure we're going to hear people saying they're the weakest team to get a first round bye ever, so on and so forth. None of that really matters. What matters is it would have been really nice if the Lions beat them. I think the Vikings could beat them if they played their game. But again, they're not a contender. Rodgers is not playing well. If not for that yards after the catch on that pass, who knows what would have happened. Their defense is keeping them in games, but the major point I want to make about that game is that it's infuriating to see how well the Lions played against them, considering they're the Lions, considering who was playing, and to see the Vikings lose to them twice. To see this Packers team barely beat the Redskins and the Vikings losing to them twice. Not only just losing to them, but arguably having their 2 worst games of the season against them. Week 2, they give up 21 points in the first quarter and some change. Cousins had a sub 45% completion rate. He barely was over 50 the second time. And again, going back to the article that I wrote that, again, is going viral, I'm not saying Cousins is perfect. I don't think he is. I don't think that great or elite quarterbacks, even playing outside of their comfort zone or playing outside of what they're good at or efficient at, would play as poorly as he's played in situations. That having been said, we have yet to see Cousins play his game against the Packers this season. He did it last year, and look at his numbers last year. Granted, the Packers made a lot of changes on defense, but personnel-wise, but it's just it just blows my mind that they've lost to the Packers the way that they've lost to them this season. I'm gonna look at your comments in a second. I really want to know what you guys think about facing the Saints. I've heard from a lot of people that I talked to, like outside of the internet, that they felt like the Saints were the actual contenders. They were the best team in the NFC. The Vikings, obviously could have beaten, arguably should have beaten the Seahawks in Seattle. The 49ers have looked really, really good at times, but they've also lost some games recently. Maybe they're a year ahead of schedule in regards to like the youth and their game plan, and maybe like the Vikings back in 2015 against Seattle in the playoffs. But the Saints obviously are very polished. They have a lot of talent. They cheat all the time. Run by the NFL's equivalent of Palpatine and Sean Payton. So I guess it's really gonna sting when we lose to them next weekend, and I'm saying that I don't want to be a defeatist or a contrarian or look how cool I am because I'm down on the team. But I'd had my dad read the article that I wrote, and he literally just didn't say a word. He tossed my phone and left the room. He's a little upset about Ohio State as well. But what do you guys think about Saints? I do think they're obviously beatable. I think that the Vikings can beat any team in this league when they play their game. But I'm concerned. I'm concerned about Thielen's availability or health, not availability, about Cook playing and his injury maybe leading to a turnover. I'm extremely concerned about the fact that this coaching staff referred to this game as a mini bye and is probably already have this deep folder-wise about playing the Saints, and when they have too much time on their hands, things tend to go a little sideways. So I do want your guys' take on that, but I also, this show over the course of 1 or 2 days is going to get, 1,500 views. If any of you could please, and I'll post this in the article for this, I'll post this on our social media multiple times, but if we could start a hashtag of not getting too cute, hashtag don't get too cute, that would be amazing. I think we need to get the message out there. I'm not pretending like we're going to actually have an impact on the outcome of the game, but I do know that the team pays attention to things that we do. So we could at least put that out there. I know Zimmer is not very enamored with the online fandom of the Vikings, which I do think is a little short-sighted. I think sometimes the NFL does things basically to cut off their nose to spite their face in regards to, sharing statistics or embedding videos. You can't embed videos. People have to click over to see them. And I understand that that's a lot of lost revenue for them. That's not probably the best example, but point being, they pay attention. And I really just I've said this a million times, but I would feel so much better if we lost going out doing what we do well than doing something like we did Monday night. Thoughts on the Saints game, maybe the game today, Boone's performance, Mannion. Let me know. I mean, this is kind of an open line show. I'm really interested in what you guys have to say about that. So let's hop into the comments real quick. The first one is from a new person. Done. Minnesota Vikings are losers, man. We're going to get blown out next week against New Orleans because if Seattle wins tonight, we go to Seattle, right? Am I wrong about that? I thought maybe you're right. I thought that the Saints were the 3 seed because they won, but you very well could be right. If that's a little embarrassing. So some people are saying we definitely are going to play the Saints, and some people aren't. I thought for sure it was the Saints, but I know if the Seahawks lose, they'll be the 5th seed. I think that because both the 49ers and the Seahawks had recent losses, that they would fall under the Saints. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is off the top of my head because they have 3 losses as well. They just have a weaker conference win-loss than the Packers. Also, this wrinkle right here did not exist before this season, and I'm not even kidding. I look like Leonardo DiCaprio just there. Great. So, Ndun MN is not a troll. He's also not some guy from Wisconsin. You can see that from his username. There's just a lot of, and I say that because, again, his comment is basically that we're losers and we're not going to win, or we're going to get blown out. And it's hard not to at least relate to his state of mind, obviously. I have zero confidence in this team at this point. I linked an article in the article I keep plugging that I wrote after the Chiefs game as the president of the Purple Doom and Gloom Society, and I'm going to make merch for that this week as well. And essentially my thoughts at the time were I have no confidence in this team in the playoffs for 3 different reasons. One would be Cousins regressing back to the mean that was him through week 4. There's context to that, though, obviously. But in that way, I meant just in his performance. So if the Vikings were running things the right way or the way that they've had success and Cousins wasn't succeeding, that's what I meant. 2 was the secondary. 3 were wacky, don't get too cute coaching decisions. The latter of that, obviously, is the overarching, over-encompassing point. It's, again, partially why I didn't do a lot of shows this week. I don't want to keep just repeating myself. I feel like I'm doing it right now. But it sucks. It sucks. That game Monday night sucked. I thought maybe the Lions would win, and then we'd be in a position where we'd say, well, we could have won the division if we won Monday night. That didn't happen. But, I mean, to bring them down to the wire like that, okay, so for the people who are going to rip me to shreds for alluding to the fact that we should talk about replacing Zimmer this offseason, can you just really look and answer this question for me? Is this what you expected? And expectations are subjective. I know Joe Oberly, who is the co-host of the podcast I do every week, Morning Joe's, always says, well, I don't talk about expectations because they mean different things to different people. That's true. Now, I try to align my expectations with what the team's expectations are. And the team has made it clear time and time again for years that they're going all in for a Super Bowl. Maybe to pay us back for building the stadium. It doesn't matter. Bringing in Sam Bradford was a good example of them going all in because they felt like they had the defense to win a championship, and they just needed an offense to muster 20 points a game to do so. So Teddy goes down. Oh no, are we going to wait a year, maybe 2, for him to come back and put Sean Hill out there? I remember people texting me saying, well, we can go 9-7 with Sean Hill. I was like, well, that's not what we want. Ugh. So they bring in Bradford. Then he gets injured. Case Keenum comes in. They got close. they were a lot closer than my memory even kind of let me know. I rewatched some of the Eagles game, the NFC Championship game this week, and my memory was them, us scoring the first touchdown, then having a turnover, and then things going to shit from there. But it was close even midway through the second quarter. It fell apart after that. But if not for that other turnover, they were moving the ball. The defense wasn't as porous as it ended up being later in the game. And so you can see why they brought Cousins in that game, though, because Keenum was a very limited passer. He only really had a couple different options when he did that, or when he was out there for passing plays. It was, a deep route and then a check down route. A lot of the time he would just default to the check down, especially in the playoffs, because he had to. A lot of people don't remember that he had a much better offensive line in 2017 than the Vikings did in 2018. He had, let's see if I can remember this, Riley Reef, Easton, Helfline, Berger, Remmers. But then there was injuries to Easton and Berger, so then they had an offensive line closer to the 2018 offensive line, which was arguably one of the worst offensive lines this team has ever had. Easily the worst tackles, or guards, rather, that they've ever had. And because of that, he did a lot of checkdowns. But before that, in the regular season, there was multiple times where Thielen was wide open down the field, but Keenum had already kind of looked him over. I can see why they brought Cousins in, because they wanted to expand their playbook. They wanted to get a guy who could make every throw and who could, go through his progressions and his checkdowns each play, as opposed to kind of being tethered to the onesie-twosie situation that we had with Keenum. Cousins comes in the start of the season. He carries the Vikings team. The offense carries the Vikings. The defense was bad to start last season because Zimmer's brain broke after the Eagles game. He tried to perfect the imperfectible. He made things too complicated, per his admission. Then, I'm talking like PA all of a sudden. Then he starts to figure things out, lets the guys just play, simplifies things on defense. The defense starts to play better. Meanwhile, the offensive line is falling apart because the guy that you paid for a lot of free agency money to play tackle, you moved to guard because you refused to draft any interior offensive lineman for some reason. And I'm talking about Remmers. You bring Brian O'Neill in, who has been spectacular, but Remmers was never meant to be our guard. There you go. Compton on the other side. I don't know. If you look at that draft and you look at the guys that were available between Hughes and O'Neill as in terms of interior offensive linemen, you'll get extremely upset and you'll understand why I'm torqued. So yeah, things fell apart at the end of last season. I get that. And Cousins played bad. There was discord on the sidelines in terms of Zimmer versus DeFilippo. For whatever reason, Zimmer couldn't just make him run, even though I don't know if he was just sending him emails. Could you please run this week? After the game, I guess you didn't run. He has the power to do that. He fires them. You learn nothing about Cousins or this offense. It takes a few games this year to really learn what Cousins does well. Even though, I really, while I think I have good instincts in regards to things that I see and that I read, I am not a huge, I don't understand football on the level of someone who's played football. I played football for one season growing up. Never played it again. Still have the trophy, though. Falwell Park over North. We killed it. I had bronchitis the entire season. I was a running back, and I just essentially sat on the sideline and wheezed. So we see what Cousins is good at this year. We know what he can do. We know that when you use him correctly, he can be an MVP. So the plan to go all in and to really go for the championship and the expectations kind of are working if the Vikings don't get in their own way. So, I just feel like, again, the question is, are you okay with being 10-6? Are you okay with being the 6th seed? Are you okay with having a game and a half improvement from last season, considering the investment that this team has made in itself in every way possible. Stadium, TCO, the draft picks, maxing out the salary cap, the Wilfs paying for everything that Zimmer and Spielman want. Spielman giving Zimmer every shiny new defensive back that he wants in the draft in lieu of some of those offensive linemen. You sign Cousins to a record-breaking deal, a market-changing deal. It'll be looked at through the annals of NFL history forever as the contract that changed everything. Guaranteed money, quarterback money. And you waste the first year because you don't invest in the offensive line. Because, again, I don't understand football on this level, but I knew Cousins' strengths and weaknesses. I knew he was bad at sensing pressure. I knew he had happy feet in the pocket. I knew he was bad under pressure. Weak side pressure, blind side pressure especially. They knew that. But Zimmer couldn't help himself in regards to Hughes. So you waste the first year. I don't even know what you would classify this year as. If they're one and done, which they most likely will be, they're wasting all of this opportunity. I have never in my life seen a team this balanced. For the Vikings or really anywhere. Position by position. I mean, let's put it this way. In terms of expectations. If you're playing Madden this season and you have every player the Vikings have, and you turned off trade logic and salary cap situations, who would you trade on this team? Who would you bring in? Outside of perhaps some offensive linemen, maybe a 3-tech. I'm sure people are saying Rhodes, maybe Waynes. I like Waynes. Mackenzie Alexander. But point being, for the most part, this team is stacked. And you know, at the time when people were discussing bringing in Jalen Ramsey, the defense was giving up 15.8 points a game. I mean, what difference would he have made at that point? Granted, Rhodes fell off a cliff after that. But this team, again, is stacked. 6th seed is not good enough. One and done is not good enough. I don't see what changes they would make this offseason to justify keeping Zimmer even to his contract in 2020 or especially beyond it. They're not going to get rid of Spielman, obviously. I'm not even saying that. But I am saying that the answer might be right in front of us, and that answer might be Gary Kubiak. He has taken a team that had a great defense, that brought in a quarterback, that had expectations up to here, and he won a Super Bowl with a quarterback who basically was one hit away from being a Christopher Reeves situation. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to look at some of your comments. Nick said the play calling has to be good. We will know by the first drive how this game will go. That is you nail on the head, man. We will know almost instantly whether or not we have a chance in this game. I think subconsciously or otherwise, Cousins throwing balls into the feet of his receivers Monday night was a sign that, oh my God. I mean, that's how I took it. I don't know about you guys. It's going to be a long night, fellas. Strap in. John says if the Seahawks and Vikings play at Seattle, if the Seahawks win, Vikings play at Seattle. If the 49ers wins, Vikings play New Orleans. Okay, so, all right. How do I go back and delete the first 5 minutes of this show? Crap. Okay, well, that's a good question, though. Who would you guys rather play then? The Saints or the Seahawks? I know my answer. I know it. You know what it is. I mean, it's obviously Seattle. They should have won that game. Even with Wilson picking on Rhodes the entire night, they should have won that game. That third quarter was probably the worst quarter of football I've ever seen. And they were within 4 points at the end of that game. They could have won. Tang, you made it. Tang says the worst was moving Remmers to guard from tackle. Yeah, I love Brian O'Neill, so it's kind of a hard argument to make. But bring in Will Hernandez or something. I don't know. Side note, Bradbury has underwhelmed this season, wouldn't you say? I mean, I don't think he's graded out not even elite, but great once this season on PFF. That's kind of disappointed. Um, Also, Tang, where do you live? Like, I'm not asking for your address, but are you in Minneapolis? I think I want to be friends with you. Um, Tang says, "Ooh, never mind. I blame Cousins, but mostly the coaching for going 10-6. Against the Chiefs, Seahawks, Packers coaches let us down more than Cousins did, in my opinion. Yeah, should be 13-3. My prediction was 12-4. By the way, they are like never ready to go into the game and never adjust after halftime. Yes, in those games they go to what doesn't work for the offense and never use what works. Yeah, I mean you and I are on the same wavelength in that regard, and it was what additionally frustrating Monday night because against the Broncos game they had a shitty game plan. They went into the locker room, came out for the second half, had a completely different game plan. I was actually very happy with it. They picked up the tempo, did a lot of no huddle, quick offense stuff, and it worked. I know I've said this before, but there was a point in that Packers game where the Vikings were winning, I think 10-9. There was under 2 minutes left going into halftime, and the crowd started booing them because they were like lackadaisically just walking around. Yes, they were deep in their own territory. I think they were like at the 10 or something, but pick up the pace. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just dumb, but a lot of this stuff just confuses me. Nick says Cousins needs to be rolled out. The play calling makes me scream when Cousins doesn't have time. And I hate to keep plugging my own stuff, but please read my article on Purple PTSD about the window of opportunity and them not knowing why. Because Zimmer's quotes after that game and then after he reviewed the tape I'm going to have a nosebleed if I even explain it. He essentially says, well, we couldn't do those plays because they did a good job of containing us. That doesn't even really make any sense to me because they didn't try. Zimmer did say he did say we got him out of the pocket once and he had a ton of time, but he threw an interception. So it's not the best example, obviously, but the ton of time thing, doesn't that kind of jump out at you at some point as a coach? Considering the fact that Zadarius Smith dominated that game like Khalil Mack would. He was in the backfield the entire time. He was disrupting everything, runs, throws. So the one time you do roll him out, he gets a ton of time. Why would you not do that more? Why did Zimmer say, well, they were containing us? Well, how? Because you didn't even try. Did they have a spy? Why wouldn't you try anyway? I mean, I just don't see other teams doing this. I don't see Lamar Jackson not doing RPO or running because teams are putting 50 spies on him. You know what I mean? Like when Cam Newton was Superman, did they stop doing what he was good at? No. So why are we doing it? And why doesn't Zimmer know? Why 4 days later after he watches the tape, why does he say, oh, well, yeah, I mean, we probably should get him out. So he's not standing around. So he deviated from the fact that they stopped us and just basically said it was like a play calling situation, which to me should be enough to fire him. If you don't know that, if you don't know what your offensive game plan was or why you weren't doing things, what are you doing? Nick says he's focused on the defense too much. Yeah, I mean, I've said this a few times, and I try not to because I know our reach is getting bigger, and I want to be very careful with what I say about people because they do determine a lot of things for us. We do have press passes, for example, but I also want to be honest. I'm not bashing people personally. It's part and parcel of the job is being criticized. I mean, that's why they make so much money. I mean, there's other reasons, but there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of scrutiny. And I just feel like he's a glorified defensive coordinator. I've seen him more times than I can count when the Vikings have the ball with his microphone up in the mute position, which you would think, okay, he brings in these guys like Norv Turner or even Gary Kubiak, who are essentially co-head coaches and who run that department for him. But at the same time, as a guy who is a quote-unquote defensive mastermind, you think he would have his microphone down saying, okay, I'm seeing what they're doing here. Maybe we should do this. From my perspective, I think they're going to blitz or they're going to, whatever. It's just, I don't know. It clearly hasn't worked outside of Shermer. And so, again, I don't want to see more of this next season. I want to see Kubiak. All his guys are already here. You can keep Zimmer as a defensive coordinator. That would never happen. Keep George Edwards. I don't know. I wrote last season when the Vikings started rough and the defense seemed to be checked out, that Zimmer's seat was heating up. And the only reason I wrote that, I think it was week 5, was because Charlie Walters from the Pioneer Press said the same thing. And I was referring to that in my article, but people were saying that I was calling for him to get fired. They're like, pump the brakes. It's been 4 games since he almost made it to the Super Bowl. And, so I get that people, it's a lot to call for people's jobs. I'm not necessarily even doing that. I'm not saying let's start a movement or whatever, but I'm just putting the question out there to you guys because I respect your opinion and I really like having these conversations with you guys. Like, is this what we expected? Are we missing a massive opportunity? Would getting rid of Zimmer be tantamount to blowing things up? That's what everyone said when I wrote that article last year. The seat getting warmer. Everyone's like, why would you blow up the team? You're blowing up the team. You're not blowing up the team. Everyone is still there, sans one person. And that person has had the keys to the city. He's gotten everything he's asked for. He's gotten every player he's asked for. He's had players take salary reductions. He's had carte blanche to build the team of his dreams. And I applaud Spielman and the team for doing that. I think it's a winning organization. I think it's a way that you win. But you do sometimes see the Timberwolves being a good example that money isn't everything. And while I'm not saying Zimmer's on the level of some of the things the Timberwolves have done, I am saying that perhaps this is the peak of the Zimmer era, and it scares the shit out of me. I don't want to be covering. It's maybe a little bit selfish because I cover the team and I don't want to cover a bad team. But the reason I don't want to cover a bad team is more personal to me. It's more emotional to me. I love this team very much, and it means a lot to me on so many levels. It's how me and my dad bond. I mean, if there's that scene in Silver Linings Playbook where Robert De Niro sits down with Bradley Cooper and he kind of starts crying and he's like, I want to watch football because then we can get into stuff. And I can't even talk about it because I'm going to cry. That is my life perfectly. Even the lady making Krabby Snacks and homemades. Especially after I got out of treatment 7 years ago. And I've been sober since. That was a big part of it. I mean, we rediscovered football with me being cognizant of it, me not blacking out at halftime or disappearing from the stadium and coming 2-3 hours later behind the Target Center in the parking garage looking for my car even though I didn't drive. At 3 a.m, it'd be freezing. My phone was gone. It was just, I was a mess. And football in that regard saved me. And so I don't want to bash people for the sake of bashing them or call for people's jobs willy-nilly for clicks or for emotional engagement from readers. But I really want this team to win and to succeed, and I'm just extremely frustrated about it. I think it's important that I explain it that way because I'm a very genuine guy. I'm a very open guy, and I don't do things without considering every angle of it. And so I do think it's an important conversation to have. That having been said, this video will probably age poorly and they'll go on a run and win the Super Bowl, and then I'll dissipate like at the end of Infinity War into dust with a smile on my face. Or never mind. I was gonna spoiler alert. Yeah. Tang is talking about some moves you can make on defense. They definitely need a 3-tech. I would love to. I mean, just in terms of the next week, I'm really interested to see what Curse might be able to do in the nickel. That might help. But we'll see. Maybe I'll come back after the Seahawks game, the Seahawks 49ers game tonight, and talk a little bit about that if it does end up that the Vikings play the Seahawks. But I'll just leave it at that. I really appreciate everyone that tunes into the show, everyone that reads the articles. Things are getting really cool for us, and it means a lot to us. I mean, we work every single day. My team of guys, Joe, Kirby, Reed, Sean, Deshaun, Mike from V61. We love this team. We love doing this, and you guys are allowing us to do it. And our dream is to do this as a full-time job, and we're getting very close. And so your support means everything. So thank you so much. And if you want to share this show, if you like the conversational aspect of it, that would be really cool. We do have a Patreon. If you go to Patreon and search for Purple PTSD, that money goes into creating new content for you guys. We're trying to do a lot of amazing things. I have actually some really cool news, hopefully, coming up in the next couple weeks. And if you want to join our message board, I mean, we have a complete social media system that is basically a Vikings fan social media system, a Vikings fan Twitter, a Vikings fan user group, a Vikings fan message boards, live chats, all of it. So check that out too. I mean, I love hanging out with you guys, and I would love to continue this conversation when I'm not on the air. So thanks everybody again for tuning in. I will hopefully be back later tonight. If not, I will check in with you guys tomorrow. Thanks again to Tang. You're my man. See you guys.